Every year, thousands of young people across East Africa graduate. Families celebrate. Universities celebrate. Governments celebrate. But 3 years later, many of these graduates are unemployed, underpaid, or struggling to survive. In Uganda alone, more than 700,000 young people enter the job market every year, yet only a fraction of these secure formal employment. In fact, 12% of graduates obtain formal employment. My name is George Kanyihamba, and today we are looking at whether education in East Africa is empowering young people or simply credentialing frustration. Joining me today are two libertarian thinkers, Jorame Mwesige from Action for Liberty and Economic Development, and Odong from Action for Direct Impact. Gentlemen, welcome to Afro Liberty Talks. All right, let's start with Odong. What does economic freedom mean for the graduates?
Economic freedom is broad. It has no confinement to only cater for graduates in life, because if economic freedom is a practical element in the market, and the market has no segregation, has no distinguishing of whether you're a graduate or you're not a graduate. The market treats you in a lump sum.
Would like to focus on.
I'm coming to that. Now, being the fact that graduates are assumed as a skill force that are launched into the market. Now, our assessment of economic freedom vis-a-vis treating them is by assessing how they are, first of all, consumed in the market or absorbed in the market. So it's so much beautiful of the statistics you gave. That is according to UBOS in 2024. That for Uganda, over the 700,000 and less than 12% actually being absorbed in the market space. Now, when we talk about economic freedom has more to do with the ease of doing business. And ease of doing business has more to do with the creation of opportunities, right? So in a situation like that, only 12% of over 700,000 skill force that you assume you've begged to come and serve in the market are not being absorbed. It means over 70-something% are left idle. That has to bring a question on the economic freedom in that kind of environment. Either it's a signal that the environment is not free enough for the private sector or for the market to expand way enough to consume this task force. Okay? So it has to bring us to now question on the ease of doing business and the ease of creation of these opportunities, because where there is economic freedom, creation of opportunities are unlimited. That means the opportunities to consume this skill force, because of course skill force is a vital force in fueling and moving the market forward. But in a situation whereby over 70% of the skill force that has been launched to benefit the market is not being consumed, it means the market or the employing market is stiff. And also, it's not growing or expanding. That means the economic freedom ought to be questioned in that environment. Yes.
So when you talk about the economic freedom, should we actually, specifically for the young people, for the young graduates, should we actually blame entrepreneurship, employment, or there is something deeper?
Okay, well, for economic freedom to be in place, there is it's a roller coaster of planes. There is a system play. That is, of course, the system upholder is always the state or the government. Then there's also the individual themselves. Because the individual, the kind of, mindset you uphold and the mentality, either shape you to operate economically free or operating in economic bondage. Okay? Now, in a situation whereby you're skilled and go offer your value in the market, and then you end up being skilled and go to look for refuge in the market. It's also another aspect we really need to see. But then also we also need to look into the education itself that is producing and giving this promise to this skill force of coming into the market. Is it doing enough to generate people who are coming to expand opportunities, or people who are coming to hide within existing opportunities that are already now in this?
I'll bring in a different perspective from Jorame. First of all, before we go into it, do you agree with the definition of Odong Arthur of economic freedom, or you would actually define it differently?
Yeah, I will relate with his definition, but probably economic freedom are conditions where the control and management, starting and owning a business, is controlled by an individual with limited government intervention or without great restraints. That is how I put economic freedom. Starting, owning a business, sound money, property rights, rule of law, they all should be sound. For someone to manage and run a business on freedom terms. Yes.
So how do these young graduates realize economic freedom if they are not starting businesses and they are maybe going into employment?
Yeah, the picture,
freedom is for only business.
The young people, of course, ultimately will go in the market. They will go to look for a job, they will go to start a business, and they will enjoy the market. And what we see in the market, to draw for a good picture, education and the people you are talking about runs within the dynamics and forces that are different in the market. It is like the frog in an ocean, in a lake, where there is a crocodile, there are big fish, the shark, actually which are going to consume it. When you look at Uganda and the market forces, or the challenge we are facing today, the taxes, the regulations, the property rights. When you look at economic freedom index by Fraser Institute, Uganda is ranked globally 4.6 on a scale of 10. That is below the average. That your property is not secure in Uganda. That when your property is not secure, it means starting a business for an investor is not guaranteed. An investor will fear to come to Uganda. You get it? And when you start a business in Uganda, it is likely to collapse. If you look at the figures by Uganda registration, Ubers, you see 62% of the business that start every year collapse in the first year. So you find the dynamics, the policies. Museveni has just signed a bill. Yes, a law. The construction and the construction bill, I think it is called the construction bill, where you have to pay a lot of money for young graduates to build a business what? A business house. Such are all actually preventive. The regulation by the government, the intervention made by the government has always been a challenge to the young people. So it is very, very imperative that we open with ease the way how the market operates.
Okay, I get you. So translating it to the young graduates, I remember we were talking about unemployment.
Yes.
So do you think employment or formal employment is equals to economic freedom?
It depends. It depends, because if someone is employed, you may find the salaries is not enough to make him free. And the choice of job may not be the one that a person is willing to take, but because of the situation, you find someone going for such a job. And when someone gets that money and come to the and actually gets money, that man, and look at the market where he's going to use that money. For example, the prices, for example, the market condition, inflation, you find the money is being taken away by. You look at the government, is too big. The tax rates in Ghana are up. And his money cannot help him survive for the next month or build a business for himself. So in fact, the market forces are actually downplaying the employment which is being actually created. Apart, even before talking about the employment, creating an employment here in Uganda or jobs, you find the unemployment rate in Uganda is 15% and 15 plus 16 right now. So it is difficult to get a job, and when you get a job, it is difficult even to use the money how you want it, because you find the taxes, inflation, and all that in the market.
Okay, let me bring in Odong as well. Now that we have defined the economic freedom, I need to understand, or our viewers will want to know, is this a problem of policy? Is it a problem of skills? Or it is actually a problem of market?
Okay, well, I think we shall be narrowing so much the understanding of economic freedom if we only try to limit it to employment and the likes. Because economic freedom is not only curtailed in those envelopes, because it also has to do with how then do I spend my money, because I can earn it and then it does not even keep it. It is actually enslaving me the more. So that is also a possibility that I can still be employed, but I'm still enslaved economically. Now, that is also a question for us to debunk on in a later stage. But then,
you can give us an example.
Okay, a case in point is, let me give a simple example of someone working in a factory and let's say is earning, for instance, in the city center and is earning below 100 US dollars. Yet the cost of housing alone is going to take around $80. The cost of transportation alone to go to the workplace. So you're living in deficit.
But that's what Jorame mentioned, that it depends on the amount of salary you earn.
Yes, so that's why me talking about freedom, it now brings me to what you said. It has more to do with even the policies landscape. Okay, that the taxes in the environment, that in as much as someone can easily get employment and the likes, then the environment, the taxes in the environment, are they in such a way that someone can be robbed off of the small they are working? That is also another important. But then it's also important as we're coming to the education landscape and the graduate. You have to understand there is a statistic that was issued by UBO Steel, that very database, that there is a category that was categorized under need. That is not in employment or in education or in a training institution. That means they're redundant in the economy. But that statistics was over 50% of youth above the age of 20. Okay, now it means, and chances are high, people literally half of the youth they're not in employment, meaning they're not tracked in employment, meaning they're in informal employment. Now, when we're talking about economic freedom, we also need to look at them. Now, it brings me to what Jorame said, that the ease of doing business is so much key. But also for those who are employed, economic freedom comes in aspect of the rule of law, where the respect of contracts and the rights. Now, in the situation whereby I'm employed and I'm insecure on the job I'm on, that one also brings in the policy framework of ensuring I am certain, because when I am confident of where I am on, when the contracts are being obeyed, I can use the same contract and maybe get additional capital in terms of loans and the likes because I have a certain contract. Okay. So economic freedom has a lot of policy frameworks to play around. It's not only about people being happy and enjoying the lives, but rather the policy landscape. Jorame said it earlier on about Uganda's ease of doing business. Because in a situation whereby unemployment is high, the only solution to the high rate of unemployment is the creation of new jobs, right? And the creation of new jobs is by enterprises. And enterprises need a free environment to what? To come into the market. So logically, when you're talking about the economic freedom, it has to translate largely to enterprise building, setup, sustainability, and scaling. Because the government in itself is rigid in nature. Okay? Government is not scalable, but enterprises are scalable. So the only solution to embody and curb this worry of unemployment is to have more of enterprises. And how do we have more of enterprises? Is when we have more of free market policies or free market understanding or operations, that it is easier to create a business, it is easier to expand, it is easier to export, it is easier to import, it is easier to start and grow a business. That is what will create more opportunities, and it will consume these new skills, because with opportunities expanding, there is more demand for skills. A sign that there is no demand for skills is because there are no enterprises to accommodate these skills. And there is more production of skills. School is like, a kitchen. It's cooking every day and producing in the market. But then the market itself, they are suffocating, fraternities that are hindering the market from expanding, to absorb these skills that are coming. That is why, the equation is not balanced, and it brings us into this current worry that you're producing more than the skills that are needed in the market. Not that they're useless. They cannot be accommodated. That is what the data shows. The data does not show that they are irrelevant or they are mismatching skills. No, it shows indeed they are skills. They cannot be consumed, meaning there is no environment consumed.
Let's bring in Joram. As we speak today, there are Ugandans who are planning to even go in the Gulf to make more money. Most of them are unemployed, actually have degrees. And every year, thousands and thousands of Ugandans go in Arab countries to get employment. So what do you think is the problem, despite them having degrees that they are promised that after you get a job, but they still struggle economically and in the perspective of economic freedom that we are talking about?
Yeah, the problem going abroad to look for opportunity is not a problem. But exactly as you said, what takes them out? We have, of course, the problem of unemployment. You said the rate is 16%. I asked about if it is a positive problem. Partly it is. One of the challenge we have is government, and the government is too big. It is consuming what is produced, and of course, we talk about taxes on investors. The government money comes from investors. The owner of
what do you mean by a government being big? Before you explain, just for our viewers to understand.
The government takes money from the investors. The size of government is, if you look at the structure, the ministers, we have over 80 ministers. We have over 529 MPs. We have many districts, 100 for the south. So that is a burden to the economy. It consumes what is produced instead of investing that money to create more jobs, to produce more for export, to create chains of jobs. It is destroyed by this group, the government. When you look, why I choose the government is because they take taxes, exorbitant taxes from these ventures which will be creating jobs. And also, as I told you, building a kiosk in Kampala, you are required to pay 500,000 for a graduate who has no money. Today, corruption in Uganda is the greatest enemy of prosperity. We lose over 10 trillion every year because of the poor policies, because of the unwillingness of the system. So, the education that will actually be creating is for people to innovate, for people to get jobs, from those who have created them. They find they can't because there is no ease of doing business because of the policies that try to kill the environment.
So are you saying that we are actually blaming the young people too much? You say we should rather blame the policy?
No, if you get me well, I said the policies.
Yes.
Is part of, and of course there are other factors like, if you look at the figures, like trading international or intertrade East Africa and Africa intertrade, it is difficult. Transport here is very difficult. We find because of politics, the roads in Africa are not constructed well that way. For example, getting an airplane from here to Ghana is very expensive than getting an airplane from Ghana to France. So there are structure problems and political problems that we need to address. And if the government does not actually look at a person that gives people freedom and people find doing business easy for themselves, it will be very, very big problem. The ripple effect of creating a policy that gives a job creates many, many jobs for the people in the society. Because when you allow one entrepreneur to invest because of the good environment, it will attract another person. It will attract competition. It will attract massive production. And in the process, more jobs will be created, bigger market will be expanding, and at the end of the day, we shall have many jobs for these graduates.
Okay, thank you. So, Odong, you mentioned about the aspect of removing the barriers to entrepreneurship. And he's also mentioning about the same, that we need to have an ease to do business in Uganda for us to actually employ more young people. But I want to pose a question. If today we remove those barriers, would young people be ready today?
Okay, thanks very much for that. Yeah, it's important we are focusing on Uganda, but then I also want us to try expanding a little bit and focus on Africa, okay?
We are looking at Uganda and East Africa.
I understand, because in a situation whereby, because there is room for expansion, in case someone cannot get an opportunity in Uganda, there should be an easy environment landscape for them to be. That's why at times the ACFTA come into talk and what, because what we claim to be a crowded workforce in Uganda may be demanded in South Sudan. So such talks also should be looked into. How easy is it for people to move? SCFTA has that loophole whereby there is that commission of goods and what, but travel of individuals has a little bit of restriction. Yet individuals travel with skills and the like. So that's another thing. Then you asked something important about whether the individuals are ready and the likes, right? I personally think they are, because they are backed by the very systems that are sensitive to the market. The curriculums are shaped based on the demands in the market. The institutional framework are shaped based on the demands in the market. I think they are ready. The only thing is the opportunity. All they need is the opportunity. The question here is, there is another opportunity, right? And the argument here is expansion of the opportunities. Because the entire argument, find in the data there is that claim that, at times these people produced from the institutions are not well skilled and the like, whatsoever it is. Yeah. But with skilling, that is easily approached. It's easily attached. There are mentorships there, it's easy. But even if they are skilled, you want to say all the over 70-something% are not skilled. So that is a lousy excuse. The excuse is there is a stiff market. The only issue is expanding the market. Now, expanding the market is either creating enabling policies locally that have to boost them, that also have to motivate those those graduates to go into entrepreneurship, because there is also a bias of the graduates seeing the risks in entrepreneurship because of the unfair business environment, and they are not risking in entrepreneurship. So they would rather hope and wait for a better job and opportunity than taking a risk to create. Why? Because it appears that making it in business is harder than making it by waiting 10 years for a job. Okay? So that is also another thing. But the most prudent thing is here to create an enabling environment for them to even be motivated to start. Because there is claiming, we need to create them opportunities. But then also, can we create an environment that when there is no opportunity, they are pushed to appreciate to start? Because some point they may be even biased to start. That at point A they are crying up. And then also to hit a little bit on what Jorame said. Jorame talked about government and the likes. And then I want to bring one example that government took, and I think that was literally an insulting economic action. Let's look at the PDM. If you really want to raise people out of poverty, you don't give poor people money. That is the other thing.
You give them what?
You don't give people just because they are poor. You give people, a poor person needs to be intubated. Now, here's a situation how you can create opportunities. Let's say the PDM aspect. Suppose there is a youth hub. Let's say, for instance, a youth hub that is struggling. It already has a test of time. It has potential to scale. When you finance that, they'll have the ability to employ more skills and expand, right? But when you give someone whose immediate demand is the food to eat at home, do you really think they're going to invest that small money? So that is also where I think the government intentional efforts. The government may have efforts to lift people out of poverty, to bring so-called economic dependence.
But they also cry of capital, startup capital.
Well, that is also an important thing to say. But as we talk about the capital, it's also important to understand the cost of the capital. That's why even if you're given, because right now, if you ask a young graduate what is the capital, they will actually not, if you give them 1 million, they will not be able to manage it. They will think of 100 million. Why? Because the cost of capital is also expensive. Why? The entire framework that we talked about, the cost of property, the cost of transportation, the cost, and all those are attributed to taxes.
Okay. Jorame, I see you have something burning briefly.
Yes, I just wanted to, you asked along the question about if young people are ready. If you look at the figures, Uganda is one of the most entrepreneurial countries in the world. I see it is only the environment that destroys the jobs. I see the corruption, the bureaucracy in registering business, sometimes related the big signs that is consuming the capital, and of course the cost of the capital. It is all that. And although lastly talked about the government program like PDM, operational wealth creation. See, all those programs are destroying jobs. You need to know where the government is getting that money. That money is, the government gets it from an entrepreneur who has created it. And when that money is got from the entrepreneur, it means you are destroying a job, which will actually consume that graduate. And when you leave that money with the entrepreneur, what will happen? It will be invested, and in the process, that production will increase, which production will increase the job market, and also, of course, the other change which will create more jobs, like marketing, like accounting. So the process will actually create more jobs. But when you bring PDM, when you bring operational wealth creation and other government scheme, where you go in the state house and the government gives you free money, that literally kills more 1,000 jobs.
Cost of doing that is enough to demoralize them.
Isn't it an aspect of quality and standardization?
I've literally told you. If we are now to question the quality, then I encourage us to question the entire institutions producing those skills. If we are to question quality, then let's question the institutions that we are entrusted producing. How then do you tell me someone spends, literally on average, an engineer who has gone through the average scholar stuff in Uganda, 25 years of baking. You're prepared someone for 25 years and you're telling me does not have the quality to construct a latrine, a 5-stance latrine. So to construct a 1-classroom block. I'm just in construction. I've not yet gone into other aspects because there are very many aspects. Yeah. Let's say even to supply bills, they are asking for experience. They are asking for staff. We are just value chain management. Let's try to be realistic on some of these things. That some of these things have to be intentional. That when you're bringing a policy and really talking about creating opportunities, you're creating a landscape that is this far, and then someone is coming this far, but you are assuming, you are saying we are skilling this person to operate at this level, but the policies are...
But you mentioned on the about the aspect of market, and a market which is free, which is competitive. And also the government brings in an angle of actually how do they compliance. So do you want they just bring in people without considering the competition, who the highest bidder takes the thing, or who has complied all these steps?
I don't know. That's very important. But then by putting hindrances, because what I'm telling you are barriers are not enabling competition.
Do you think these barriers are meant actually to cut off people or to help them to be better in that form of doing business?
The intent of barriers are to limit. Let's be realistic. There is no barrier that is to enable. These are excuses that is it for quality and what, but it's to limit. The truth is you're trying to limit those you assume are not qualified. Yeah. But in that limitation alone, there are those who could qualify and be able to serve, but you're not giving them a chance.
Okay, you're right.
Sarah, you know, these barriers are actually a problem. The market knows what is needed in the market more than
The government.
Yes.
And its institution.
Those institutions that sits up there. We don't know what exactly is needed, what people they are thinking, what is needed to consume.
They don't make research.
Check my kid. The research with individual's choice, individual preference are subjective. It may change tomorrow. Today may want to eat matoke, but tomorrow I may eat portion. The government does not know what exactly is happening. And that is the greatest injustice. All those are roadblocks that actually, it makes people jumping them difficult. And in the process, people will be investing in the economy, people will be aspiring to do jobs, are kept away. And that is the greatest injustice that we must exist. And, the government program has been talked about. The social programs, they all destroy our economy, and those are the barriers actually come about. And in the words of former Afro he said, justice is that what belongs to me is mine, and what belongs to you is yours. And I believe you agree with that. But when government start coming and siphoning money from Odong and then give it to me because of its policies, that becomes a problem. And a person like me, whose money has been taken away from Odong, will not, of course, have my economic freedom. It will be taken away and given to Odong. So government policies, bureaucracy, and the roadblocks of registering a business, and also determining standard, the experience they need, the capital. You need to have a capital threshold to apply for a government policy. You need to present a bank statement which you don't have. You've been at school. So those are all challenges. The government takes your money, and then it determines for you the standards and which you should operate. You have stolen my money through the taxes that I worked freely for myself, and then when you get it from you in terms of a deed of a contract, then you decide how I should get it. You need me to kneel down. That is the greatest injustice. You cannot take my money and then decide how I should apply it from you again. With the greatest conditions, with the harsh terms, it is very difficult, and of course it gives the environment of how I should create more opportunities and also expand my businesses.
Okay, that's Jorame over there is really gummit when it comes to speaking to issues that he actually believes in. Arthur, you actually, I want to go back to you because there's an aspect you mentioned about market. Most of the time you're like the free market, Africa continental free trade area, freeing the market, economic freedom. Do you think even universities, to make sure we solve the problem of unemployment, should be actually market-driven, market-oriented?
Oh, definitely, because you can't be cooking what is not being eaten. You have to be adaptable. And some points, I didn't want to go so much into blaming the system for the education system in itself. Because, of course, for even to have university, you had last time they issued a lot of outdated courses a few years ago. So, and that is not blamed on the students being taught, but rather those teaching the students. So, universities and institutions should know that education should become like a product in the market. That it's either consumed or it's not consumed. It's either there is demand for it or not. So in a situation whereby you're producing more than is consumed, automatically inflation does happen. If you're producing more skills than the opportunities available to consume it, and you're still consuming the same skill, you're still producing the same skills, that is the cause of inflation. You know what causes inflation? People usually only look at inflation in a man aspect. But inflation is when there is a lot to attain to gather few, okay? Because what creates value is absence, okay? Absence or scarcity creates value, right? But in a situation whereby there is a lot of rampant same skills being produced, let's say from 1996, the same skills being produced for the 1996 market, the world is changing. It is that they are the same skills being produced for the 2026 market.
I think they have changed the curriculum.
That was of late. None of the university graduates is yet a product of that curriculum, right? But yes, nevertheless, fortunately I did engineering, and there's something when you're designing, you hear British standards and what, but you're not in Britain. Okay? You're not in Britain, we're in Uganda. So at times when you're looking at these things, when they say BRC, that is British Reinforced, is it wire, what? Come on. All these years, you want to say you've not trained scholars enough to research and create Ugandan standards? These are some of the things at times. Maybe even the market is limited because very few people are working on British standards. Okay, anyways, but...
George, I want to make a point on that. Yeah. On education. In school, if you see what they teach, the teachers destroy our own opportunities. Wow. The government officials are all products of government institutions. The economics they implement in offices are socialist. The socialist economics destroy the economy. I talked about the government program, the PDM. I talked about the operational wealth creation, the women programs. They all destroyed. Those are what we implement in our markets are product of the school where we went through. So that is the school you're talking about, the education. The education should be free market. It should be capitalistic in nature. In terms of the service they're delivering, for example, the economists they teach about government as a solution. That government creates jobs, government provides service, but when you ask them where they get money from, they say that we get money from the entrepreneurs. It is a contradiction. How if you are a solver of the problem of for example, if you pretend that you offer services, why do you first go to Odong to get the money to implement that service? So, if you look at the environment today, starting a school and operating it, how much you need, the taxes you need to pay, the requirements you need from the Ministry of Education, they are all prohibitive. You get it? Now, the government is saying we are paying more to science. I hear that they want to say that debt also. It is the market that should determine how much someone should get. The government schools are not performing very well, even if they are paying too much money. Because at the end of the day, they know that it is the law that failed them, not the service that they offer. In private school, the director of the school will pay you according to the student that pass. You get it? And you will not even demand higher salaries because your students have failed. What happens in government school? In government school, the law says welfare for the teacher. And they will be paid according to the law, the salary scale. So those are the challenges the government just pay for. They don't pay based on the market and reasoning. What is demanded in the market?
Maybe that's why young people are all running to government jobs. They all want government jobs.
But the government that is the greatest contradiction. The government is stealing from some people to enrich itself so that they can create political programs. The PDM and all those schemes are political programs. They are helping those who are in power.
So, Jorame has mentioned that government dominating education.
No, I'm not saying that the government has dominated education.
You have said that
over 75% of education is private.
Yeah, so
the government is disappearing.
If you say if you say that people in the government or the policymakers are actually product of government university.
The curriculum is determined by the Ministry of Education.
So they are implementing
the service they are delivering in education does not reflect what the education, the market should be. What's the government should be getting? If the government is, if I talked about the policies. I talked about the government program as a reflection of the government product. As a government schools or government system. I mean the school system. So when the school teaches us that the government is very important, it creates jobs. That is what we are going to do in whatever in office. And in the process, we shall destroy jobs, which will be created by entrepreneurship because we shall receive money from them using the taxes.
When he says, talk about curriculum, yes, anyway, at times it's embodied as a national prestige if you control your own education, right? I may not go into that kind of talk, even if I personally think at times education should be like a product in the market that can change any time. But then also coming to that, now let's look at the Uganda's education system. There is what they call curricula and co-curriculum, right? You are graded on curricula. You may be the best footballer in school, but you are co-curriculum. Unless if you fail mathematics, you're a failure in school. But why don't you expand it that even someone can be graded in the co-curriculum? Do you know that you can be the best footballer in school? I'm trying to cite sport industry. You know how the sport industry is employing people in the European market. Young people, and look at the age bracket that's in the sports. These people we are complaining about. At times we think now in Uganda, because let me come on the policy, because they are graded as co-curricular. No matter how excellent you are in the sports industry, you will not be graded by the school because they grade curricular programs. So if you're not graded based on the curricular programs, you are a failure. So you will struggle to meet the curriculum and then you undermine this other beauty. Yet there is a big economy that is not tapped in the sports and industry. That is also some other thing we have to look at too in the curriculum, as you talked about, that it should be inclusive. Nowadays, even a school, it is not playing football, they pay a fine. But will a school ever refuse to sit your name? So we really need to look at these things, that if you're really intentional in expanding opportunities, you need to do some things and also learn from other places. Because if you look at the European market, the sports industry is employing a large chunk of younger people. Because in football, when you're retiring at 35, people are retiring at 35. Here at 35, you're unemployed, seeking employment. We really need to look at such opportunities and then also try to buy them.
That's interesting, Arthur. I think we've had a lot when it comes to the problem and analyzing it philosophically. So I want us to really move on to the aspect of the solutions. Now that this is an Africa Liberty Talks program, I really feel that as our guests of experts, you can give us. Each one of you can give us 3 policy recommendations that we can actually, from here, get maybe a policy paper out of it. You've mentioned that policy is bad, government, so no, we want to get solutions so that we don't only complain, but also have practical solutions that you really feel can be able to solve this problem of, economic freedom, lack of economic freedom for young graduates. I'll start with you, Philly.
I may not give you 3, but first of all, we need to look at the challenges. We have the problem of the policies. The government, of course, should make sure that the policies we make do not prohibit, do not stop people from getting jobs, and also registering a business. They are now improving, but the moment you put any roadblock for anybody to start, you see, when the government is very big, there are very many problems that come with that. Corruption, bureaucracy. So, in the process of registering these businesses in Uganda, there is a great corruption, which the government has actually to fight. So, the policies should be made easier by eliminating some of the stages. Who should sign for me? What is required? Signing RDC should sign for you.
Which particular aspects you feel that are relevant we need to specify?
No. Today, the government should have a centralized system or a decentralized system in terms of registering. I, the government has a leader. Leader should have information concerning me. I do not need to go to RDC, for example, to register my business. NGO, for example. I should go to RDC, I should go to LC1. If I have an identity card with a centralized system of information with me, some bottlenecks of wasting my money to go, wasting my time, I should apply online and everything is completed. More people are employed to consume the wealth than creating the wealth. The sense of government, the ministers, the MPs, the number of districts, they are all impediment. There are problems, the economy. We do not need over 8 ministers. We need 7 ministers. We do not need 529 MPs. We need 50 or less than 50. Those are the biggest problems. That all money will be going for investment, getting jobs, getting more opportunity for this economy. So when the government is too big, it is a reflection of the biggest problem for the economy and poverty you see in this country. Then Africa has a challenge of politics, overstaying in power, which actually, if you go to northern Uganda, I mean to South Sudan, if you go to Rwanda, if you go to Uganda, Uganda was fighting with Rwanda. So there was no export. You get it? If you go to South Sudan today, there is war because of power people are whatever, struggling for power. Because they know power is more important, because politics is more important than anything. People are fighting to go and tap free resources. Because government in Africa is about enriching yourself, enriching with what other people have created. So the moment we don't revise our politics in Africa and make it limited and make it a pro-service to the people, the politics of enriching the politician will keep people struggling, will create barriers. So Uganda will not trade with Uganda will not trade with Congo because of war in Congo. The people of Congo will be fighting. Uganda will not trade to not create opportunity with Congo. Uganda will not trade with Rwanda because Rwanda is fighting, is having some internal problem. South Sudan, the same. The economy is Frederick said, when goods not cross the borders, soldier will do that. He said that means that people who trade, for example, if Uganda is trading with Congo, is trading with Rwanda, it means Uganda will have many opportunities in what? In Congo, in Rwanda, in South Sudan, and people will not likely fight because they value the jobs, they value the capital that crosses border. And so what we should do is Africa governments or African people should fight to have government that is pro people, government that actually is pro service, not government that actually are created for politicians to see for the resources of their own countries.
Odong, to you, let's get also your reforms that way.
Okay, thanks very much. I'll not deviate much from Joram on aspects of let's limited government, though my understanding of limited government has more to do with even the responsibilities. But government should limit its responsibilities as well, because there are things private individuals can do, and government is assumed to do that. But then also not to go so much on arm of being so political and over focusing on the government. I think policies should not be actually politically incentivized, because we are talking about education now. Let's look at, you remember there was a course that was called political science, right? It was scrapped off. Was it because it was not producing enough politicians in the market, or because there was a political interest? Things stuff will be tough. At times there are policies that are formulated and it's obvious they're shaped on the political interest. Now, even this entire narrative, oh, let's promote sciences and the bank. Do you know what these people who are working as chief administrative officers, people who are they the engineers? Are they the doctors? Are they the what? They're the people who are doing arts. They're the people who are going into civic spaces. People who are doing social sciences. But then you're trying to demean that kind of environment. People who are studying social sciences and how to deal with the people. You're demeaning it, and I think if policies are coming into a place, if it is education, it's education, equal space and equal opportunity. There's nothing again to uplift the other and demean the other. Why? It is creating that siphoning that many think if I'm doing sciences, I'm safe, yet there are maybe broader opportunities, because chances are high someone who has done social sciences goes into the advocacy space and is creating opportunity into that landscape, goes into this. Those are some of the things we need to see, not to come and demean it, because some chances are high in Africa that policies are even passed by word of mouth. That when a particular leader says something, somehow it shapes the direction of behavior of people. Even if it wasn't put in paper, and don't it shapes. Right now, when you hear schools are advertising themselves, they say we are passing sciences. Why? Because somehow there is an effort in promoting. Underground, that is more like a policy, because it's somewhere it's shaping a direction, because policies are those entire narratives that shape, because policies are more stronger when they're assumed as narratives and operated on by individuals. But policies are not that strong because they're in paper and they're effective. But those that are absorbed by people are way stronger. And then another aspect also into the policy should be framed. The very person, as I'm saying, the head of state once said that, sports, those are plays, those are games, those are not like career and the likes. So when you look at that, and then you have a ministry of education and sports, so these things have to run, and really the same ministry tasked with promoting education should promote sports. But the very person who has a narrative to create in the country says these are just games, and then these are stuff. Yet these are also employing a certain arm of people. So I think when policies are framed, they should be totally oriented on the market and not, and that one will require political, the political what it is to kill the incentives in the politics, which is a hard thing to do in Africa. But as Africa what to do, I think it's more of opening up markets. Just open markets. Me, I think they can keep the entire, keep it on in your power and whatsoever, but just open up. That when you're unfavorable here, I go here. But now, even going the other side is a problem, because the entire SCFTA, why it had a collapse on it and it has issues on it, is there is a question on the movements of people. Why? People are now a threat. Dogs can cross. Dogs don't need a passport to cross over to Kenya. But you as a citizen, as an individual, you need a passport to cross over. So I think these policies have to ease, because why we are saying this for over 17% are unemployed, because they're even trapped. We don't add that point that they're employed and trapped in Uganda. You see? So we really need to ensure that when it is hard here, I can just walk my foot and pass over and go to stuff. As far as I have the national identity card, because of the free market space and stuff, I can use my ID. Then another thing, maybe those are in the economic policies and the monetary policies and the likes, but those are not for now, I think, because of time.
Let's get a parting shot from each one of you. You can start with Jora.
Yeah. As I conclude, I believe the people of this world, the students, as you put it the question today, they need such an environment that gives them justice, the environment that gives them freedom, where their future is secured, where the property is secured, to live better and a life that is prosperous. So our governments, our society should reflect that the individuals have freedom that is different from the rest of the society. And when the government is making laws, they should reflect the freedom and the right of an individual. Yes, Jorame Mwesige, I work with Aled. Happy doing this program. Thank you.
So we can have from Arthur.
Well, Personally, I do encourage you to understand that no one has your best interest at heart than yourself, and no one gives you purpose, you give it to yourself. All these school, religion, and the likes are only contributors to shaping your purpose. So you give yourself purpose. You either settle on it or uplift on it. I remain Odong from AFODI, Uganda. Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of this particular discussion of Afro Liberty Talks, hosted by African Justice Media. Don't forget to subscribe, share. If you enjoyed this discussion, leave a comment so that we can engage more. And I know our speakers will be in the comment section engaging more with you about these particular narratives. I remain George Justice Kanyihamba, the host of Afro Liberty Talks. See you in the next episode.